Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode, I'm going to be sharing a webinar that I recorded about a year ago now, and it is for those inside of my one-to-one program. As part of that, you get access to the Mind and Body Reset Library, and I have tons of webinars and videos and masterclasses in there. But I thought I would share this one with you because it is something that I want everyone to know, and it's the power of naturopathic and functional medicine. These are the principles that I work by, that I've been trained in, and I just wanted to highlight the differences between that and conventional medicine, the National Health Service, and the mainstream medicine route, because I was personally trapped in that for a long time and I just really wasn't getting anywhere, and it felt like the doctors couldn't help me and I had no hope. But then when I found this world, the holistic healing world, it allowed me to ultimately heal. So there's a time and a place for that. And I share the differences between, and there's a time and a place for medication and doctor's interventions, but a lot of the conditions and symptoms that I work with are lifestyle driven. And you may not be at the level of a full-blown disease or diagnosis that requires a medication, and then you're just told everything's fine, your blood works are normal. So I urge you to listen to this episode and maybe share it with someone who is new to this world, who could potentially benefit from working with a holistic practitioner. And if you want more videos like this and you want to explore more of this Mind Body Reset library, then my one-to-one coaching package is currently called Restoring Energy Program or Reprogram. Just a heads up, in the podcast episode today and in what I'm sharing, it's from a while ago. So at the time it was the Root Cause Relief Package, and the course had a little bit of a different name as well. But yeah, I only have one signature one-to-one program at the moment, and that is the Restoring Energy Program. I will link to all of its benefits and information in the episode show notes if you want to check it out. But this is us working really closely together for 6 months. You get access to functional lab testing, the highest quality supplements that are out there, my personalization and direct advice and recommendations for you. And this is, if you've heard me share any testimonials and seen any on my website and Instagram, because there's quite a lot of them, then this is people going through my one-to-one package. It's just changed slightly over the years with its name, but yeah, currently it's Reprogram, and I would love to have you inside. I'm currently taking on clients for the rest of the year, and spaces are filling up fast. I have a limited number of spots at a time because I want everyone to have the best care and attention possible. So after listening to this episode, you're going to have a deeper understanding into root cause healing and what that actually means, and the type of approach and mindset that I have when working with clients, because it's not the mainstream, unfortunately, but it is my absolute passion, and it's not only given me my health back, but it's been able to help so many people now. I've helped so many clients, hundreds over the years, and if you are struggling, just know that you don't have to deal with all of this alone. I would love to help you. So you can book a free 30-minute enrollment call in the show notes. There's a link there to do so, and we can chat further. But let's get into today's podcast episode, a nice little masterclass replay. So take some notes and enjoy. I just want to start off with a little bit about my story. Then I want to go through why I'm so inspired with the work that I do, how I got into this world, and what I want you to know. Some of it may already be common knowledge to you, and that's why you've signed up to me. Some of you may have been referred by a friend who's got amazing results from working with me, and you've just kind of trusted the process and gone ahead and didn't really know a background about nutrition, naturopathic medicine, holistic medicine, whatever you want to call it. So I wanted to put some of the main points in a webinar for you to have on hand and kind of refer back to for inspiration at any point. But I'm here on your journey as well to guide you through, support you on this 6-month healing journey that you're about to embark on. So I'm very excited. And yeah, I'm excited for this presentation. So welcome. So I want to share more about my story to begin. Like I said, I've shared a lot on social media, on my podcast, but again, some of you may be brand new. So this was me, probably the ages of 20 to 25, I'd say, 24, 25. They were the worst of the years, but my health issues started when I was about 17, 18.
kind of slowly to begin with. I went from being like pretty healthy as a child and teenager, but then because of over exercising, dieting, I had food poisoning multiple times. I didn't know at the time that I was living in a house with toxic mold. So many different things. I was bitten by a tick, and I just deteriorated when it came to my health. So this is how I spent my prime years, so to speak, my early 20s with chronic cystic acne. That was probably one of my worst symptoms. And these pictures here probably aren't showing the extent it got to, because at that stage I didn't want to show my face at all. So this could have been me like on a good day thinking, oh, amazing, my skin's clearing up. But yeah, pretty terrible. And that's very difficult to deal with, as you can imagine. I had issues with hair loss. My weight has gone both ways, but the large majority of the time I was more overweight, just really struggling to shift the body fat, the pounds. And I was eating really healthily at that point. I was exercising, I was doing a lot of the right things. Some of you might be able to relate to this as well. And yeah, I'd say my diet is pretty similar to what it is now. And my face doesn't look like that, as you can see. So very inflamed, very bloated, very sick, a lot of toxicity, a lot of deficiencies, thyroid issues. I was diagnosed with PCOS. I developed mast cell activation syndrome, and I had histamine intolerance issues too, which basically meant I was just in this allergic state all the time. And the smallest trigger, whether it was food, and definitely things like alcohol. So I didn't drink for years and years because that was a huge trigger of mine. But even some of the healthiest foods would make me really sick because my digestion, my immune system was just on overdrive, and it just thought everything was a danger. And I obviously didn't feel good, and I was depressed in the process. So this kind of experience made me really empathize with people struggling. And then once I learned what I did at nutrition college, I studied at the College of Naturopathic Medicine in the UK for 3 years. And that gave me my qualification, my ability to work with people, and my foundational knowledge. But I've then gone on to study so much more. And I think with client experience as well over the years, you just learn about how different things work for different people, and it's not just this textbook protocol that everyone needs to follow. And that's why I do this work and give people this individualized care, because that's exactly what I needed. I was reading things online or in a book, trying to implement them for myself, and it just was making me worse or not having an effect. And there were times that I wasn't looking deep enough into what was going on. I was treating symptoms instead of addressing the root causes. So for example, with my skin, instead of instead of like a topical antibiotic cream or topical steroid or anti-inflammatory, I would just try and find a harsh acne product to keep it at bay. And even though it was a natural alternative, you can see how that's kind of similar band-aid solution that medication can offer. It's not really fixing the problem. Same with pain. I had chronic knee pain for a while, and I could just take some natural anti-inflammatories, such as ginger, for example, but I wasn't addressing why I had the knee pain either with that situation. So I had to look deeper, and really over the past few years, I've been able to figure it out. And now I'm just so obsessed and passionate about helping others do the same. So this is me now. I say healed. I mean, health is always an ongoing thing. We don't just reach this state and then stay that way forever. But I am a million times better and in a better place than I was. So this has been like 2022, 2023. These images are from. I don't know when you're watching this, but I recorded this webinar in February of 2023. So yeah, I lost the weight, and it wasn't a huge focus on diet and exercise, which might shock you. It was actually addressing my toxic exposures, inflammation, and the weight just naturally declined and fell off me quite effortlessly. Same with my skin. Instead of really trying to focus on the skin, I just focus on my whole body. And the body doesn't heal in isolation, it heals as a whole, which is going to be a big emphasis of today. And I no longer have severe brain fog that makes me feel like I have dementia at 20 years old. I have energy again. I feel better than I ever have done. So even before, when I thought I didn't have health issues, I probably wasn't healthy, just with some certain diet foods that I was eating. And I wasn't taking supplements. I wasn't aware of my gut health and all of that. I just wasn't aware of my body. And I think so many of us have become disconnected, and we're taught to just trust the medical system. And there's a time and a place, and I wish this sort of stuff was offered on the National Health Service and free healthcare, but unfortunately it's not at the moment. So yeah, that's why I do what I do, because I want people to have access to this information that got me my life back. So the problems with modern medicine, and let me start off by saying I am not against modern medicine. I just want to open your eyes if you're completely new to this world. If I ever got in an accident, God forbid, I want to be taken to the hospital. I want a doctor there. I probably want some pain medication. And that's how modern medicine shines. That's what it's designed for. It's not designed for chronic lifestyle driven conditions such as type 2 diabetes, obesity, even things like depression and IBS. There's really no good treatment that they're offering at the moment. You get a 5 to 15-minute appointment with a doctor. Every appointment I've ever been to has been a negative one, unfortunately. A lot of the times they've got their back to you. There's no care and listening about your story. They don't have time, to be honest, so I'm not blaming them. And they don't get taught this stuff. And it is true that over the years, our lifespan has gotten better. However, what we should be focusing on is our health span, because I don't know about you, I would rather live to 80, but be really fit and active up until that age, rather than try and prolong my life to 100, but be like bedbound for the last 20 years in chronic pain, and have no energy. That's no way of life. So we want to improve our health span, and everything that I'm going to talk about and everything that we'll be working on isn't just going to improve your current symptoms. It's going to improve your life and your following generations if you have children, or the behaviors that you change with your family will start to have a knock-on effect over time. So yeah, I think that's really important. You can't force people to change unless they're ready. So sometimes when you start this journey, you're so eager to tell everyone what you're learning and what you're doing. But I've learned the hard way that people only change when they're ready to, and just let people come to you and ask once they see that you're doing the work and you're feeling and looking so much better, then they will often start to ask what you're doing. But when I said that over the years our lifespan is increasing, they've actually said that this generation is to be the first in history, I think, that is going to live less than their parents, which is very sad. So we're kind of going backwards, and chronic disease risk is on the rise. And it's not just because we're living longer and we're better at diagnosing. It's obvious. More children have allergies. There's no doubt about that. Even when I was at school, I'm only in my 20s, there were hardly anyone with allergies, peanut allergies, but now there's kind of anaphylaxis, and everyone's got mental health issues and digestive issues and skin issues, eczema, asthma, all of that stuff, and a lot of it is preventable. And an issue with the modern medicine system is that it's a pill for every ill mentality. They are, as doctors, taught to diagnose a condition based on a set of symptoms and then prescribe a medication based on what condition the person has, which might be life-saving for someone with type 1 diabetes whose body literally cannot make insulin, a life-saving hormone. So in that case, taking insulin as a medication and being given that diagnosis can literally save someone's life. But to do this with every condition, this is how people end up on 5, 10, 15 different medications, and they can all interact, and they come with side effects. Like every medication has a downside, whether it's an impact on your gut, your liver, whether it depletes nutrients. So we don't get told the full story, unfortunately. For example, the birth control pill, I was personally told there might be a slight increased risk of breast cancer if it's in your family, and things like stroke and blood clots. But if you look at the actual medication insert in the package, it's like, I'm probably exaggerating, but the size of like a football field, with how big it is once you look at it. And I had some really nasty side effects from the birth control pill, but because I wasn't warned of them, it took me a while to put 2 and 2 together that things got worse when I started the pill, because it can take time to do so. And it may not be the big complications that you have. It might be that your gut starts to become a little bit more inflamed, and you don't absorb your food as well over time, leading to nutrient deficiencies, or it can make you a little bit more anxious over time. A really interesting one is that the birth control pill and the synthetic hormones in there can actually affect your mate selection for a woman, a female. It can cause you to be more attractive to the pheromones, so that the smells of someone who's more similar to you, which isn't good when it comes to reproduction. We want a diverse and kind of opposite genetic profile just to make a more kind of strong, healthy human. So there's so many case studies of people being on the pill, get married, go to have children, come off the pill, and then all of a sudden they hate their partner and they can't stand them for whatever reason. Sometimes they actually don't like the smell or the look of them anymore. And it's because the body and the brains have been on these hormones for such a long time. And yeah, the issue is that they don't look at the whole person, unlike we do. So if you've ever had different health symptoms, you're sent to one person for one thing. So it might be a gastroenterologist for digestive issues, an endocrinologist for hormones, and no one is looking at the whole person. No one's putting the puzzle pieces together, which there's a time and a place for specialists, and it's great that they exist and they really know their stuff when it comes to that issue. But it's good to also have generalists. And I have over the years specialized in certain hormone conditions and gut health, but I've actually become more of a generalist over time because we can't address and treat one thing and not affect the other. The body heals as a one unit. Another issue is that the research is just so outdated. And a classic example is, at the moment, you might be hearing all about the gut microbiome. So this diverse rainforest of bacteria and bugs in your gut. And this is being talked about on things like podcasts and books, but for the actual recommendations to change in GP surgeries and hospitals, that's going to take 15 to 20 years for that to actually catch up. So the things that they're prescribing and looking at now is from 15, 20 years ago. And that's because it takes such a long time to get studies done. And studies are great, but in practice, we also have to have an open mind and know that not everything is going to be studied, and it can't be so controlled in the real world. You have to look at people's experiences, even though it's not got a clinical study backing it, unfortunately. And there is a focus on medication, as I said, and some medication can be life-saving, the insulin one, for example, and things like anti-inflammatories and steroids. If someone's really in pain and that gives them some relief, I'm to support that. But in the meantime, you want to be working on the actual causes of the inflammation. So they don't have to keep taking the steroids because they are linked to some like nasty side effects in the future. Immune suppression, joint issues, bone issues, skin issues, and I could go on. And it is because they're taught this. They only have a few hours maximum on nutrition training. So it's not that they're withholding information. If you go in there and ask about diet and lifestyle, it's that they literally don't know. But I get annoyed when they kind of shun you and they just make you look like a crazy person to even ask that, or they say absolutely not. There's no connection between your skin issue or your bowel disease with diet. To me, that is just stupid. It makes no sense. And that's why people can come out of the appointments like in tears, like I've done many different times. Especially in the US, I find that doctors are way more pushy with medication and drugs, but it's kind of getting the same way in the UK as well. Some practitioners are literally just trying to help, but some have an incentive sometimes with surgeries. The more surgeries they do, the bigger bonus that they get at the end of the year. And at the end of the day, you can't patent a plant. You can't make money on a herbal medicine. So they turn some of those compounds in herbs into a medication so that they can actually put their name on it and profit. And if you really think about it, would the medical system actually profit and be such a big thing if the medication helped to heal people? Probably not. So that's something to think about. Then in terms of the history of this, just something that I remember from my studies that really opened my eyes was how John D. Rockefeller, this big oil tycoon and America's first billionaire in the US, he actually was a big reason that modern medicine is a thing now. So I think his mother or his father was a herbalist, and I thought that would have kind of swayed him to be more supportive, but he actually went the other way. He was very driven on career and becoming rich. And he was in the oil industry, and he discovered how petrochemicals, basically you could derive things from oil and change them into different things. So for example, a type of plastic was made from oil. They created certain vitamins and pharmaceutical drugs from oil as well. So his brain lit up, and he thought of all of the different ways that he could benefit from that. So he benefited from the oil, the chemical, and the medical industries all at the same time. And they were cheap to make, but sold for very high profits. But around the same time, almost half the doctors and medical colleges in the US were practicing holistic medicine, often using knowledge from Europe and Native Americans and their ancestors. But he thought of them as competition, practitioners like herbalists and homeopaths. And this is why some of those, especially homeopathy, is considered quackery. People think that it's just like witchcraft, and it doesn't work. And he was the one responsible for a lot of that, because he saw them as being rivals and they were going to take his money. So they were mocked, demonized, and some doctors were even put into jail. And did you know that the third leading cause of death in the USA is actually medical error? I was very shocked when I read this. And medical errors, things like drug interactions, surgeries going wrong, improper aftercare, misdiagnosis, so these rushed appointments, people aren't being heard and listened to, communication errors, so many things, but it's above accidents and stroke, diabetes, Alzheimer's, which is just crazy. So we need to be careful. And the other conditions on this list, probably bar accidents and suicide to some degree, are driven by diet and lifestyle. And take cancer, for example, people think it's just in your genes, it's just destiny, there's nothing that you can do, but cancer is only 5 to 10% genetic. 90 to 95% is influenced by your environment. And your environment is your diet, your lifestyle, the products that you use, your relationships, where you live, all of those things. And I really love this quote. It's genetics load the gun, but it's the environment that pulls the trigger. So it's just a nice way to say that you might be predisposed to certain things, and it's good to be aware potentially. But with the example of Angelina Jolie, how she had the BRCA genes for breast cancer and ovarian cancer, she made the really big decision to just have a double mastectomy and hysterectomy, so have everything out. And like, it's her choice at the end of the day, but I just think that's a really huge decision, and it does come with health effects, all of the surgeries and the aftermath as well, going into menopause basically in your 30s or however old she was. But there is a way around that. So even if your mum and aunts and grandma has had breast cancer, you may be at higher risk, but there's so much that you can do to support estrogen detoxification and avoid environmental estrogens. You can change your diet. You can test your hormones every year or every few months if you really want to see what's going on and really reduce the risk. And I actually have been trained in genetic training, so looking at people's genetic reports and seeing maybe what they're prone to, if they have issues with detoxification, if they're prone to hormone imbalances. But I've actually not used that as much as I thought I would. It was quite trendy a few years ago. But I actually realized that someone could have on paper perfect genetics, but they could still be really sick, because you can influence whether those genes are turning on or turning off. So they aren't just static. You can actually activate them or deactivate them with the choices that you're making. Same on the other side, I've seen people on paper, they've got really bad genetics. Everyone has these genetic mutations, they're called, but they're actually quite healthy because the body is working around it, and the way that they're living is supporting the body and not causing additional stress. So just be mindful of that. and look at your family history to see what you're maybe prone to. But it's often that the family members have similar behaviors and similar jobs and live in similar areas. So something like obesity, that's not genetic. There are things that can make you a little bit more insulin resistant, and maybe your thyroid's a bit more sluggish, but it's usually that families have been taught to eat in certain ways, or it may be this generational trauma and programming that's been passed down. Maybe they all have thyroid issues, and that's the real reason for the weight issues, not a genetic weight mutation.
I just want to check, are you addressing the healing foundations? Not sure what I mean. Well, these are the important factors that I believe that you need to address in order to be in optimal health and overcome your stubborn health issues and symptoms, whether that's chronic digestive issues, acne, hair loss, period problems, weight gain, anxiety, fatigue. I could go on. Because I want as many of you as possible to have this life-changing information, I've bundled together 6 of my juiciest and info-packed masterclasses priced at just £111. Not only are you getting these recordings, which are between 60 and 90 minutes long each, on the following subjects: the power of the subconscious mind, stress, trauma, and the nervous system, supporting your female menstrual cycle, mastering your metabolism, optimizing sleep, gut health and detox. You're also going to receive my healthy groceries shopping list and my favorite non-toxic products guide, which are both usually reserved for my one-to-one clients. Whether you're brand new to the holistic healing world or you've been trying to work on things for a while but feel stuck, I can guarantee there's something within this content that will help you to understand your next steps and what you're missing. Sometimes it's something so foundational that's being overlooked. Get instant access to the Foundations bundle today for just £111 by clicking the link in the episode show notes, and I can't wait to hear about what you've learned. Grab your pen and paper to make notes and get started today.
And I thought this was a nice graphic as well to look at. If you look at the top of the tree, what we see on the outside world are all of these labels and diagnoses. And I'm actually not a huge fan of all of these diagnoses that we get given. They can be helpful to know what someone's dealing with and to give someone some peace of mind often, but these are all symptoms of deeper problems. And the deeper issues are the things on this image below the surface, under where the roots are. And these are the things that I'd be looking at with clients. And that's through functional medicine, it's known as, or naturopathic medicine. Things like inflammation, toxin exposure, nutrient deficiencies, genetics, lack of exercise, and poor gut health. And if you had a plant and the leaves were becoming diseased and damaged and discolored, would you try to find something topical to put on the plant, some sort of cream to relieve it? Or would you actually look at the soil, the root structure? Would you make sure that the pot that it's in, the vase that it's in, was big enough? You'd probably do that, and we need to do the same with our own health. So breaking down the environment into more detail, and these are the things that I would focus on with clients, and probably what we're going to be working on in the root cause relief package. So I just want to touch on food is medicine and the most important points that I'd need you to know at this stage. So food is medicine, but it's also information to the body. And people forget that your body just doesn't make things out of thin air. It doesn't renew itself with no tools. It uses the food that you're eating to actually make cells, and then cells make up tissues. Tissues make up organs, and organs make up systems of the body, like the digestive system or the reproductive system. So if the basic information that's going in isn't good quality, because there's a big difference between the protein from lentils, for example, to a chicken breast, and there's so much context that needs to go into it. But it's also, for certain reactions in the body, you need certain nutrients to do things. You need vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. So if you're not getting that from your food, some things your body can formulate on its own, but that's an extra task your body has to do. But a lot of it we have to get from the diet. A lot of things are essential nutrients. So we need to focus on nutrient-dense foods. So again, you might have someone who's into calorie counting, and they say that 100 calories of Skittles is the same as 100 calories of egg. And that is just not the case. The impacts that the Skittles are going to have on your blood sugar, your inflammation, your brain is going to be completely different. So it's not all about calories. Even with weight stuff, as I said before, with myself, it wasn't about calories. It was about how my body was absorbing the calories, and hormones play into that too. Everyone is also different when it comes to diet, and what works for you now might change. So if you're trying to heal from something, you might need to change up your diet a little bit to support you in this moment in time. Or if you are pregnant in the future, or when you're training for some sort of event, your diet might need to change there. So we want to find something that works for you now, but don't get stuck on keeping that the exact same for the rest of your life and giving yourself these labels like, I only eat this type of diet, because I can guarantee that it's going to switch and your needs will change as you get older or as you go through different life stages. The quality of your food is also important. This is something to really prioritize long term, is more local, organic produce and food and meat if possible. But in the early stages, it's probably not going to move the needle too much. And I understand that this can be quite an expense to do that. So I always say long term, when you're through the bulk of your healing and you're wanting to maintain your health, that's a really good time to focus on more organic. But in the short term, because I know that you're going to be using things like supplements and paying for obviously these services, you might not have the budget to do so at the moment. But I want to let you know long term, it's actually really important for not only your body, but the environment too. But then lastly, I want to also say that diet isn't everything. So I don't want you to get too hyper-focused on diet. And I know that some clients come to me really stressed out, really restricted, or just completely overwhelmed and therefore not doing anything when it comes to diet, because they've just been told so many conflicting messages and they have no idea what's working for them anymore. So I will be looking at diet and helping guide you through that, but we're also going to be looking at some other things too, including your environment. So we want to not just pay attention to what you're putting in your body, we want to look at what you're putting on your body, and the type of air that you're breathing. We want to make sure that your water is clean, because long term, another one is clean air and the clean water. So in the short term, if your budget is low, it's not going to make too much of a difference, but long term, water filter, air filter, organic food are going to really help you to stay healthy in this modern world. And what you're surrounded by also matters. If you've ever heard the quotes in terms of mood and productivity, that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time around, it's also true with your home or your workplace. If everyone else in the workplace is really unhealthy and are constantly stacking on junk food, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Definitely not impossible, because I've been in that situation as well. And if you're really committed, you can make some changes. But you also want to make sure you're around supportive friends and family, not people who are constantly trying to push you to drink or eat the piece of cake and you really don't want to because you're supporting your health. Then other factors that I look at with my clients are your mindset. Are you in a victim mindset? Are you in a stuck mindset? Or are you in a healing mindset, a growth mindset? Are you ready to change, or do you need to really work on the beliefs that you have? Your relationships, I'll also be asking about that and helping you to kind of navigate those over time. I want to know as much as you're willing to share about your stress history, your trauma history, just because that can take a physical toll on the body. And I really want to know what's led you to where you are today with your health. And I'm not a trauma therapist or counselor or anything like that, but the work that I do actually strengthens your body and strengthens your resilience to stress, so that things that happen in the future, which it will, because it's inevitable to have stress in life, it will mean that your body can bounce back better and isn't completely knocked back when you have a setback or some sort of stressful situation going on. We want to also pay attention to your connection to nature. I think that's a really important one in this modern world that we are losing touch with, and it is definitely affecting our health, our sleep quality, and also our movement. And this can look different as you go through your healing journey as well. You might, if you're really struggling with hormones or energy, might be better just taking it easy for a while, because movement and exercise can be a stress. We don't want to be sedentary, but we might need to dial it back. And if you really love exercise in the future, we can work towards something a little bit more strenuous. And then some of the tools that I use are supplements. You'll probably be recommended supplements on your health journey. And I want you to know that quality matters. So even though you might have tried probiotics before or magnesium before, it's probably not going to be the practitioner brands, the really good quality products with minimal, they're called excipients, bulking agents, fillers, additives, colors, dyes, all of that can be found in them. And yeah, I use the good stuff, so it can often make a big difference. And it probably is more expensive than what you've paid before, but it's for a reason. It's because they work, and you probably don't need to take them for as long because they're actually causing a shift in the body. But more is not always better when it comes to supplements, and they always need to be the cherry on top, so to speak, with a good, healthy diet and lifestyle. You can't out supplement a bad diet and lifestyle. So we lay the foundations first. I make sure that you're really prioritizing the foundational habits with your nutrition, your sleep, your stress management. But supplements can be really helpful to move the needle a little bit if you have poor gut health, if you have really low nutrient deficiencies. Sometimes they can't be shifted alone through diet. So I said diet's not the only thing. You have to use tools to give you a little bit of a boost short term. And it might be good to take a handful of supplements on rotation long term, just because food is so deficient, the soil is depleted, many of us are stressed, so we might need to support our body in the long run, but it's not going to be as many supplements as if you're going through like an intense protocol for something. And they can be powerful, so you can't just take them and read something online and start implementing them right away, especially if you have a diagnosed health condition or are on medication, because they can really make a big shift to the body. So you want to use them with guidance, and I'll be providing that for you during our time together. And I would hope that during the time that we spend together, you'll learn more about your body, so you can then long term have the knowledge to support yourself and guide yourself through little protocols in the future if needed. Functional lab tests can be really helpful to investigate underlying imbalances such as mineral deficiencies, gut infections, and hormone problems. I have access to so many different functional lab tests, hair tests, urine tests, blood work, stool tests, but I am really mindful that most of the time people have to pay out of pocket for these. Insurance rarely covers them. And I know that they're expensive, and I've spent thousands and thousands of pounds on lab tests over time. They can be useful, but I only recommend them if the person really wants to, they have the budget, they want to see on paper what is contributing to the health issues, that's fine. But only for me, if it's going to really move the needle, help me to see something that I'm not sure about, then that's when I recommend tests. I don't just ask you to do thousands of pounds worth of tests before we even get started, because it's probably not that useful. And your symptoms and your health history can actually tell me a lot about what's going on. They're often much more specific than the labs run by doctors and GPs. So I've had people say, I've had a stool test before to check for parasites and it's negative, or they've checked for a bacteria called H. pylori that can be linked to reflux and it was negative. But so many times people have then done the test that I recommend, and it all of a sudden shows up with infections. Because just with the stool test example, with the conventional GP ones, they're using just a lab technician a lot of the time looking for presence of a bacteria or parasite in the stool. But because of human error, then there's going to be so much that's missed. Whereas the ones that I use, they use DNA or PCR testing, it's called. So they don't need to actually see a parasite to diagnose it. They just need to see the smallest fragment of DNA present in the stool sample to know that it's been there. And I think that's just so much better than relying on someone looking under a microscope to see stuff. Same with blood tests. Certain things can be tested through blood. Iron is good tested through blood, your thyroid. But with the tests that I use, we want to look at things like minerals, calcium, magnesium, which aren't as good tested through blood. They're better, in my opinion, tested through a hair test. and that's one of my favorite lab tests. It's called HTMA. And with that test too, or other tests that I use, I can not only see like what your thyroid is doing, like a blood test looks at, it also shows how your body is using the thyroid hormone. So that's not information that you would get from a blood test from your doctor necessarily. Another issue is that reference ranges with conventional labs are too broad, or they don't test enough. A classic example is a thyroid panel. So many of my clients have sluggish thyroid function, and they go to the doctors, they're tired, they're constipated, they have joint pain and anxiety, which are classic symptoms of low thyroid. And the doctor tests maybe TSH, which is one of the markers, and it's normal. And that's because it's normal for that particular problem right until the thyroid is fully damaged and diseased and they need a medication. But that could be 30 years down the line before that actually happens. So we want to try and prevent that if possible and catch it early by doing more than just a TSH test. There's actually like 6 different markers that I would routinely test for a better investigation with someone. But also the reference ranges for the thyroid markers are completely different. For example, with that TSH marker, they would say anywhere from 0.5 to maybe a 5 would be considered normal, but I'd say optimal is between 1 and 2. So you can see that's a much more narrow window, and someone could be at a 2.1 and told that they're normal, or they could be at a 4.9 and told that they're normal, when they're actually like really probably in a bad state with the thyroid at that stage. But we don't want to wait until we have a full-blown disease to do something. So to finish up with, I just want to show a little example of a client. So this isn't a real client. I've just kind of give you a summary as to what the difference is between conventional allopathic medicine versus holistic functional medicine, which is the approach that I take. And just remember that there's a time and a place for both. I would love in the future if they both collaborated and we had this more synergistic approach, but I really doubt that's going to happen, unfortunately. So for now, I'll just keep in my own lane doing the work that I do. But let's take this classic client example. So female, she's 32, she works in finance, a very stressful job. She has a 4-year-old son, but she's currently trying to conceive again, which she's struggling with. And she has symptoms including fatigue, depression, irritable bowel syndrome or IBS, painful periods, and recently her skin has been breaking out in acne. So the allopathic approach for this would likely include, again, it depends on the situation, but these are the general things I hear. The birth control pill is usually a go-to. I know that she's trying to conceive, but just to regulate things short-term, especially the period pain, birth control pill could help with that. And I swear they just put women on the birth control pill for any little depression, mood issue, because they think everything's due to like female problems. And there might be painkiller recommendations if needed, ibuprofen, paracetamol on her period, antidepressants for her mood, topical creams or antibiotics for her acne, some sort of stomach acid blocker, omeprazole, fiber, lactulose for constipation or reflux. And she may be referred to a counsellor for the depression or a dietitian for her IBS, who might put her on some really restricted diet or just not give her any freedom with her food and not actually figure out why she has IBS in the first place. Whereas with me, I would like to investigate many different things, but I see her different symptoms. I know they're affecting like her gut and her hormones and her mood and her skin, but they will all be interconnected by some similar root causes. So I would love to test her minerals, for example. This could be a big thing that's affecting multiple different systems. Minerals are really important for energy production. So this will help with the fatigue, mood, which will help with the depression, hormones for the fertility and period pain, and so much more. So I use HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis testing with my clients. We would work on gut health most likely because imbalances in the gut, also known as dysbiosis, this is an imbalance between bacteria and things like yeast overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, parasite infections in the gut, can be linked to skin issues like acne and mood issues like depression and anxiety. And I would try and support her through her day-to-day busy schedule as a mum, as a woman in finance. I would just try and give her some really actionable things to do. Is she drinking enough water? Here are some of the questions that I would ask. What are you eating? How often are you eating? How much caffeine and water are you consuming? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? What do your routines look like? How often do you have a bowel movement? Do you do anything to help manage the stress that you're under? Are you happy in your job? Sometimes the questions get over time, but I probably won't jump in straight away with that. But over time, things like that. Are you happy in your job? Do you feel like you processed your childhood trauma with bullying at any point? Like these would be some more complex, sometimes difficult questions to ask, and it can make a huge difference to look deeper. But we always start with the basics. And I would see her fertility issues as a symptom, because if she's got all of these things going on, would she have time to look after a baby right now? Is she taking care of herself enough to then have extra resources and nutrients to grow a child? Probably not. So that's probably why her body is on purpose reducing her fertility short term so that she doesn't get pregnant at the moment. But that's not to say that she's infertile, and just the terminology that's used in the medical system, it can then have people then have this belief that they're infertile, and they go to all of these drastic measures to have a child. And it could just be that we need to take a step back, look at the person, look at how she's living. Not saying that it's easy, but this is the type of work that is important for whatever condition that you're dealing with. You can use the conventional approach on the side if you really want to, and sometimes it's needed. And I would always say to visit your GP with new symptoms, or if you're concerned, or if you need someone to look at a rash in person. All of that I obviously can't do, but if you're dealing with chronic symptoms and you've reached the end of the line with the medical options, or you're just feeling like you want to figure out what's going on and listen to these symptoms as messages from your body instead of constantly suppressing them and shutting them down, this is what I'm here for, and this is what I'm going to help you with the root cause relief package. So I cannot wait to support you over the next few months.